This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Hi, my name is Igor Kheifets, and this is the List Building Lifestyle, the only podcast which delivers cutting-edge conversion strategies from the online trenches straight to your earbuds. Download the transcript of today's episode and all future episodes at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com. I also invite you to grab a free copy of the Wealthy List Builder Survival Guide at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com/survival. And now, once again, it's time to claim your list building lifestyle.
Welcome back, list builders, to another edition of the List Building Lifestyle with Mr. Igor Kheifets in a coffee shop.
Oh, is that where I was supposed to say something like, oh, hey?
So, wait a second. You're living the list building lifestyle again? Usually you're in a quiet place. The last few episodes, I swear I've heard kids screaming and stuff. Are you waterboarding people out there that are scamming our marketers, or what the hell's going on?
Dude, you won't believe. I'm in a coffee shop and I have nowhere else to go. It's just as simple as that, you know. Yeah, I'm just like that. I just have nowhere else to go. A buddy of mine, where I used to record these episodes over at his place in his like little office space, and he won't let me do it anymore because he needs it, and I feel kind of bad fighting him for it. Back home when we record, which usually is the time when Erica comes back home from kindergarten, it's impossible to record because she's running around and screaming, and my wife is screaming and everybody's screaming. That's how it usually is in the Kheifets household. Just everybody's screaming all the time.
Yeah.
So I figured, you know what? Let me get lost in the noise. Something about being in a coffee shop full of people, which is not always the case in this particular coffee shop. It's actually quite dead most of the time. But, being in the coffee shop with people and having all this background noise of people walking around the shopping mall, and, there's little fountains around me so you can hear the water running, which sometimes makes you want to pee. But, mostly you just hear the water running. It allows me to get lost in that noise. And I don't know about you, but the other thing I love is people watching. I just love watching people, how they sort of just kind of walk around with their shoulders kind of slouched and their head down and really hating their life and having no purpose. It really reminds me that I should be thankful for what I do, right? And it just inspires me to keep pushing harder and harder, because it's easy to lose motivation once you quote unquote made it.
Man, that's funny. And the words that you use there in particular are funny to me, the no purpose, because that's one of the things that Cupcake says attracted her to me, was that I look like I have purpose when I walk, because you walk around and look at these people and they got nowhere to go, nothing to do, and they're not going to win at life. So they're just going to slump around and move slowly. That's good to hear, man. So what do you have in store for us today?
Well, actually, I was hoping you're going to tell me, because I'm kind of out of ideas. We've done 129 episodes, dude. That's 129 things to talk about. That's 129 conversations. That's 129 ideas I had to come up with. And so now I'm like, you know what? You come up with an idea.
He's turning it around on me. All right. So I think that we should talk about your purpose a little bit more. Maybe we'll just go with that, Igor. I mean, what is it that drove you? Like, all right, so let me frame it properly. You say that some of your best customers are the guys who are about to have a kid and have this newfound motivation. So is that how you finally figured it out? How did you push through those tough 3 or 4 years where you didn't make any money?
Well, man, it's really weird, because I'm not like most people. I'll tell you that right up front. I'm very different in that regard. I could visualize myself living a really bad life if I didn't change it quickly, right? So even though I was working, I had a job at the time, and I was like, I could say that I'm still young. I have my, this whole life in front of me. Instead, somehow what I envisioned for myself, if I didn't change, right, was this really gray life of me. Actually, let me go back and let me say this. The one thing that was really common for virtually every single guy in our community was how they, as soon as they made it, as soon as they kind of moved out of their parents' home, or sometimes even before that, but as soon as they hit puberty, what they would do, they would go get a job and save money to buy a used car. right? So they would buy like a piece of shit car that was okay. I mean, for in terms of like mechanical issues, right? It wasn't too bad, and they would start pimping it because I mean everybody was. Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, we had the Pimp My Ride on
Yeah.
MTV with 50 Cent. You know what I mean? So everybody would start pimping it by putting different rims on it, giving it a paint job, putting different seats on, putting like a big,
Oh my
stereo in it.
God.
And so really their life revolved around getting a car. Now, as soon as they got that car, you would see them walk differently. You would see their posture change. You would see their life like you would see their attitude towards life get real good because they felt like they've accomplished a major milestone in their life. I was looking at that and I felt sick to my stomach. I felt really bad about these people because if that is what you aspire in life towards, I mean, you're pretty much setting yourself up for a really shitty life because nobody out of these guys was had the balls to dream about owning a Rolls Royce, right? Nobody even could dream of about, owning a Lamborghini. Nobody. They didn't even think that was possible. In fact, they won't even like the real borderline. I would say the edge of what was possible for them, and I know because I've had a bunch of these conversations with these guys. Is they would own a Toyota Camry or something. That would be like the ultimate I made it achievement, the milestone, the checkpoint, whatever. And so looking at these guys, if I didn't change, I could foresee myself spending the rest of my life thinking about that stuff, literally just living a life where, my purpose would be to buy a used car and then 3 years later try to figure out how to get a cheaper car and pay off a portion of the debt until at one point I wouldn't be able to exchange it and I would have to come up with a huge like lump sum to pay off my car, and then I would get into this whole game all over again simply because you need a car to move around,
Good.
right?
Yeah.
And of course, if that is the level of the problems you're trying to solve in your life, I mean, it's really easy to imagine how the rest of your life looks like.
Yeah.
It's really mediocre. It's really bad.
That's one of the things that I like to say, which might be a little crude, and I don't know where I first heard it, but rich people have plenty of problems every day, facing problems. Poor people have only one problem: life. And so I'd rather have the rich people problems personally. So let me dig deeper into that. Your dad was actually an employee, wasn't he? Didn't you grow up where job life seemed the only way to go? How did you end up moving into this entrepreneur space?
Well, yeah, my dad was an employee, especially after we moved to Israel. I mean, that's all he could do. And he would have to settle for the lowest paying jobs, like security guard without a gun in a convenience store, watching for shoplifters, which was really humiliating to him because, he's an officer. He comes out of he went to an army school in Moscow. So he graduated an officer. He retired from military as a major. Now, can you imagine somebody who retired from military as a major and had, and who commanded an entire freaking unit? I mean, I'm not sure if it's a unit or like a battalion or whatever, but he had a bunch of people under his command. I'm talking like 50 to 100 people or so. He was responsible for looking after, taking care of, making sure they're fed, making sure they're like on schedule, etc. To going and doing these odd jobs like an assistant cook in a hotel, right? Or where your job is to like cut tomatoes. I mean, he went to this job one time, and for the entire freaking day, he would cut tomatoes. Can you believe that?
That's unbelievable.
Like that was his job. Cut freaking tomatoes into the freaking salad. And then, that was an odd job. He settled for the most part for security jobs where he had to watch for shoplifters and stuff like that. And his most recent security job, like the last one before I was able to help him retire completely, but basically supporting him and my mom as well. That last job was a security guard position at the same facility where I worked as a security guard. In fact, I never even told this story to anybody, but I used to steal work hours from my dad because we worked in the same facility. We were like written down as two separate employees, obviously. And I would actually call him up and I say, "Hey, Dad, can I get your weekend hours this week because I'm really tight on cash."
Wow.
Now, it doesn't mean that my dad wasn't tight on cash. He was always tight. He was always living, not even paycheck to paycheck. He was always sinking deeper and deeper in debt. But everybody was hoping for me to come in and save the day at some point. And at the time, I started getting some traction in my business, started getting, making like $10 to $30 a day. So, but I still needed some extra income. And I would call him up and I would say, "Dad, can you give me your hours?" And obviously, him being my dad, he would say, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And I would take his hours. I would literally take food out of my dad's mouth to feed my own family.
The thing about that, and something that I see also in my life, is my dad wasn't educated, didn't do anything, but he always went to work, whether he liked the work or didn't like the work, to make sure that we were taken care of. So I'm kind of seeing a common thread there where your dad had to humble himself to be able to take care of you guys. And maybe he was betting on Igor being the czar of solo ads, but maybe he's just a good family man. So what has that example done for you?
Well, it wasn't easy because, sure, I can respect him being able to step over his ego and kind of do it. But I've seen the other side of that struggle because when he would come back home, he would drink. And he would always, now I look back on that time and it was almost like he was pushing me to accomplish more than he was able to. But I am grateful for him making the decision to move the family over to Israel, because as a result, I was able to become who I am today. Because if I were still back in Ukraine, I wouldn't be able to use PayPal to receive payment. Something as simple as just getting paid would not be possible if I was still living in a third world country such as Ukraine. That would be really difficult. So not to mention all the other, dangers and risks that came with it. So it's a duality for me. I mean, I believe he could have done a better job. And it may sound harsh, but it is what it is. And I don't necessarily feel that he did the best he could. He could have done much better. And this is just me being real with you guys. I know I'm being critical, but that's how I am. I mean, today we are perfectly fine. We have a great relationship. Like I said, I support my family financially, and it's a different time. But back then, it was hard for the entire family. Trust me, because at one point, about 6 months after we immigrated, he had to go and undergo an open heart surgery because he worked too hard in the beginning. Instead of going to a Hebrew school to learn the language, he went to work immediately, and my mom as well. And so to make some money, because he was always money oriented. He was never really, really super duper successful, but he was always thinking about money. So he and my mom, they went to work at a factory that was making computer chips here in our hometown, which is now closed, by the way. It went bankrupt at some point. But he worked for 6 months, and then they rushed him into surgery. They saved his life, but for the next year and a half, he couldn't get a job because he was still recovering from surgery, and because nobody would hire somebody who's I think at the time he was closing on 50 or just over 50, and he didn't know the language or had any skills for the modern day marketplace, right? And I'm sure this is, by the way, very common even to this day. A lot of the clients that reach out to us for traffic tell me the very similar stories. So we ended up struggling really bad and sinking deep in debt, going off of just my mom working until the point when she lost work. She got fired. Okay. She was so exhausted from working every single day for 12 hours, 12-hour days, that she walked into the factory facility with a cigarette in her mouth. She literally forgot to take it out. I'm not sure what she was thinking, but she got fired. And from that moment, she couldn't find a job for another 2 years. So we were literally going hand to mouth at that time.
Let's go back to that. You say that your dad could have done a better job, and I'm sure a lot of us actually think that way. But I know something about you, which is you are motivated by the stick and not the carrot. So was that a motivator for you to do better?
Yes, absolutely. For a while, it kind of was reaffirming that life sucks and that I'm unlucky. But eventually, it served as the ground into which the seeds were planted, and those seeds grew into the Igor you know today. The Igor that doesn't tolerate failure, the Igor that doesn't accept defeat, the Igor that doesn't accept poverty, and that considers poverty as sinful, probably, as any other sin, right? Poverty to me, poverty to me is a disease. I fear poverty. I fear poverty as if it's death. And so, yeah, that's definitely a big reason why, because I really, during those years, I really felt what it means to be the poor kid, what it means to have your entire class go on a field trip and you not going because you were too embarrassed and ashamed to ask your parents to give you the money, which was at the time like $30 or something. Now I know they would find the money to give me, but I didn't want to put this extra burden on them because I felt I was a burden as it is, being a kid, being somebody who needs to eat and wear clothes. So I basically did not tell them, and I pretended to be sick every single time that my class went out on field trips into museums and stuff like that. So like that was just one example of how I had to just adapt. And so when by sheer chance of an argument with a friend, I was able to get my hands on a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is the first book that really told me that to become rich, you need to act a certain way, you need to think a certain way, and you don't need to, and you don't have to buy into the idea that you have to be born rich to be rich. When I got that, I was ready for it. I was ready for pretty much anything, right? That for any resource that would tell me what I wanted to hear and what I couldn't allow myself to believe. And so naturally, right, I went into the space I am in right now, the space of business opportunity, where people just like me who struggle financially are now seeking a better way, are now seeking a way out of a really miserable existence. And so let this be a testament to you guys listening. If you are still in that place, at whichever stage in your life, if you're in that place financially and emotionally, let me be your testament and an example that you could start out broke and frustrated and clueless and make it to a point in your life where other people seek your advice and mentorship to show them the way to financial freedom.
I like it. So I want to take one more sidetrack here. You grew up a certain way. You did the work on yourself to be better. And I'm wondering how this shows up at home. How does this show up with your family? What are you doing differently so that you're not like your dad?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, first off, I say no to my daughter, right? I don't want to spoil her too much, although I think it's too late for that. But I do say no to my daughter, but I don't say no to my daughter as often as I got, no said to me. Second, I make sure that money is visibly spread around the house at all times. So if you walk into my home, you will see money, whether coins or bills, everywhere in the kitchen.
Oh man!
In the living room, in the bathroom, in my bedroom, right? Everywhere you go, you'll see money because I want Erica to know that money is an abundant resource. It's not something that's scarce, which is the way I grew up. Because ever since we moved to Israel, which was 17 years ago, right? The one thing that was made clear to me, not because my parents told me that, but because that was the environment I grew up in, that money is scarce and you have to make a decision. Like there was 1 month when we had to choose between buying groceries with less than $100 that were left in the bank account or on a Visa card or something. Yeah, I think we were already living like in debt. So we were like sinking deeper in debt every single month. So the allowed debt, I think, we're like less than $100 away from hitting the threshold for the month, and we had to choose either we pay the electric or we go and we buy some food for the week. Well, we chose the food, and thankfully, not sure how, my mom, I think she just begged and pleaded with the electric company to not shut us down. But that's not a I don't wish this on anyone, to have to make such decisions. I don't like this idea that in today's society, in such an abundant universe, in such an abundant world, where we have so much technology and so many resources, that one has to choose between food or shelter, or food or like light. It just doesn't make sense. Doesn't make any sense.
All right. So money spread around the house. Interesting. I never ever thought about that. So I think that's our time for today. And thank you for being candid and open and playing along here, Igor. That was fun, and I'm sure you'll hear from the list builders on what they think. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back next time.
Thank you for listening to The List Building Lifestyle. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play to never miss an episode. Because who knows, just one conversion tactic we share on the show might double your list and double your business. Download the transcript of today's episode and all future episodes at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com. And don't forget to claim your complimentary copy of the Wealthy List Builder Survival Guide at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com/survival. This is Igor Kheifets, and until next time we talk, have a good one.
This is the podcastfactory.com.